Yes. Welcome to our podcast of Talk About It Tuesday. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much. I've had the opportunity to speak with you both within the past few days, and man, I know that this is going to be great because I still have more questions, right? Visha, I have known you, oh my goodness, for a long time. I think it's been over 10 years. I've known you for a long time. And then when I messaged you and I said, "Do you remember me?" And you was like, "Of course I remember you." Yes. And I always and Kiosha, I always pray next to the Lord, who does he want to have on? That is the thing, because I don't want to be up here just doing anything, right? If the Holy Spirit does not lead on what topic he wants me to talk about, there we'll keep playing replays, okay? Because it is God ordained, Holy Spirit inspired. And so, Kiosha, I found you actually just typed in sickle cell when I felt the leading of the Holy Spirit and saw how he orchestrated, because it was supposed to be something else, another topic. And then when I felt that leading towards sickle cell, I was like, who am I going to have on? And all I did was type in sickle cell. I saw the abundance of information that you had posted, and I just reached out to you. And you were like, I said, well, Lord, if you want, somebody will reach back out if this is what you want us to talk about. And you two did. So thank you all so much. I want to first give you all an opportunity to let our audience know a little bit about you, who you are, and also I guess your experience briefly before we get into the major details, your personal experience with sickle cell. So just tell us a nutshell, because I have some other questions coming, but tell us, your name, what is it that you do? How are you involved with it? And, a little bit about your personal experience. It doesn't matter. Kiosha, you want to go first?
We should go first.
Okay, Visha, you've been the mic's
Yes. So it is funny because you and I have known each other, and then you telling the story of how you reached out. It's like Kiosha and I have shared platforms. So there's nobody else that I would rather share the platform with than my little sister, is what I call her. But I am Visha Jameson, and I serve as the Sickle Cell Account Manager for the state of South Carolina with the American Red Cross. But I'm also a mother of a sickle cell warrior. And I have been an advocate and working in the sickle cell arena for the past 14 years.
Wow. 14 years. Awesome. And so tell me what is that role that you are the sickle cell manager? Is that correct?
Correct.
This is the South Carolina Red Cross?
South Carolina Red Cross, yes.
Awesome. All right, Kiosha, mic toss.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiosha Garrett. I am out of McClellanville, South Carolina. I am the president of Shanavia's Dream Sickle Cell Clinic, which I started. My sister, she passed away from sickle cell, which Visha gave me the thought to turn my pain into purpose. And I took it and I ran with it. And like I said, she's been by my side since day one. And there's no other person that I'd rather have on here today than my big sister. She is, I'm telling you, a ball of information when it comes to sickle cell. When I tell you, y'all are here. So thank you all for having me.
Yes, thank you all so much. And I see I know that you have your baby there. So listen, if you have to do that while we are, it's fine, because this is real life here that we have going on. Okay, this is real life. Parents,
she's sleeping now. Sleeping now. She should be good to go.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for that, though. I feel really welcome.
Yes, ma'am. All right. So if you are just joining us, say hello to us. Say hello. Let us know who you are. If you have any questions for our guests as we are going to jump in, please go ahead and ask your questions. Drop them in the comment section. All right. So the first thing I want to say is, I'm going to try not to get too emotional, okay, is that I when the Holy Spirit gave this topic, I was so disappointed that I did not know a lot about it. I asked a few people about it, and they were able to tell me very, very little, right? And when I spoke with you all, I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not know about this? How did I not know about this? And so I'm going to ask if there's anyone else that maybe like myself that maybe heard of it, because I've heard of sickle cell, and I had a classmate that I knew whenever I was in high school that she had sickle cell, but I never knew what it was, how it was actually how she actually got it, and also what all did it entail, how it affected her being my classmate. So who wants to go first? Tell us, what is sickle cell? Give us some information about it, and how does a person end up with sickle cell? Done. Whoever wants to go first. Visha, look, she's like,
I'm muted. I'm sorry. I'll let Visha.
Okay, Visha, go ahead.
All right. Sounds good. So, sickle cell is a disease of a disorder of the red blood cells. And so if we can picture, Cheryl, you know, I'm visual, right? So we've got normal red blood cells that are nice, round, they're soft, bendable, and flexible, and they flow easily through the bloodstream. Patients with sickle cell disease, they actually make distorted red blood cells that are shaped like a sickle, the farming tool, or for our K through 5, a crescent moon or a banana. Okay, they're shaped kind of like a C, and they're hard, rigid, and sticky. And so they tend to clump together. They don't flow as easily through the bloodstream. And what happens is a lot of times when those cells clump together, they can get trapped, and it cuts off appropriate amount of blood and oxygen to other parts of the body, to include other organs and tissues. And so if you can imagine that clumping can happen anywhere throughout the body where blood flows. And as we all know, blood flows everywhere throughout the body, right?
Yeah.
In the entire body. And those entrapments can cause excruciating pain crises. And as we all know, the hallmark of this disease is pain. A lot of times when you ask people what do they know about sickle cell, it's people experience pain, they're missing from activities, you know, or they have to be hospitalized a lot. Some of those are the main things that they know about it, and that's due to the science behind it. It's genetically inherited. It's not something that can be caught, right? I always say you don't touch someone and get sickle cell, or it's not like COVID. You know, if I sneeze on you, you sneeze on me, you know, that kind of thing. But it's genetically inherited and passed on from two parents who have sickle cell trait. And there's a 25% chance with each individual pregnancy that a child can be born with sickle cell if both of those parents have the trait.
Okay, so let me stop you right. So what if two parents have the sickle cell trait? What was that you said? There's a 25% chance that the child will have it.
Will have it with each pregnancy. So I have to emphasize that because people think sometimes if, okay, my first child was born with sickle cell, that means that if I have 3 more, then, you know, I won't have any more children with sickle cell. No, that chance actually exists with each individual pregnancy. So I've come across a number of families who have multiple children with sickle cell disease, just in how those cells or those traits line up, basically.
Yeah, how they transfer. So the difference between the trait and, are we calling it, is it a disorder, or disease. What is sickle cell? Is it? It's a disorder. Is that the correct?
Disorder, disease. We say
Okay.
sickle cell anemia or sickle
Mm-hmm.
cell disease.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there is a huge difference between the two. So when you look at sickle cell trait, those individuals who are carriers make a very small percentage of those distorted red blood cells, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when I say very small, the percentage is very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
But they can still produce sickle cells, those distorted cells, at a different rate as well. So sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
look at, we always caution people who have trait to take certain precautions as well, because your body is still making a percentage of those distorted red blood cells, which can
Mm-hmm.
have an effect as well. People who have sickle cell disease, they make a vast number of those cells. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have those cells in the body that are at a higher percentage, which
Mm-hmm.
equates to sickle cell disease.
Got you. Okay. If you all have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comment section. If you're just joining us, tonight's topic is on sickle cell awareness. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. This is, and say hello to us if you are just joining us. We have Visha Jameson and we have Kiosha Garrett that are bringing awareness to sickle cell. Since September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month. And so we are bringing awareness to this disorder. And so, Kiosha, when was it? What is your I noticed you said that your sister
Yes.
passed. Now, did you develop sickle cell as well, or is it just your sister? Tell us a little bit about that.
So, being that my mom knew from a child that she had the trait because my grandfather was a carrier.
Mm-hmm.
However, my biological father did not have the trait or anything, and I didn't get it from my mom. But my mom got remarried. Well, my mom got married when I was about 6 years old, 6, 7 years old. My mom got married,
Mm-hmm.
and she had a child, which was my sister, Shanavia. Like I said, my mom knew she had the trait all her life. However, she was very cautious,
Mm-hmm.
as to who she, had a child with, because she knew that there was a chance that that child would end up with sickle cell. So
Mm-hmm.
when they got married, my dad, she asked him, well, my stepdad, she asked him if he had sickle cell trait or anything like that, and he was like, no, he didn't have it or anything like that. So that was the green light. They got married, and my mom, she
So
told me
let
she
me
had
stop.
about
Let me
two.
stop. Let me stop you right there. So is that something that somebody would want to know? I see Charity has a question.
Yes.
Is that something that I guess someone with a trait would want to know to make sure? Is that like a question that is like this is a question you need to
Yes.
ask someone that you are considering marrying?
Yes,
Yes.
and the I was just about to say at my gala last year, she made an awesome point. She always says, "Know your status." It's like a HIV status or something like that. You need to know your status, and
So
she
what does that
drills that
mean? What
into
does that
me. And
mean
I
when you say know your status? What does that mean?
You need to know whether you have sickle cell trait. And that I always say on a lab report, right? We always or oftentimes take the word of our beloved moms, dads, big
Mm-hmm.
mama, when they say, oh, that doesn't run in our family. Or a lot of times, if there's something we need to know, we rely on them. We'll go to mom, do
Right,
you know if I have
right.
trait? Because, it's our mom.
Uh-huh.
She had us, she would know. Or,
Mm-hmm.
grandma, do you know whether this? And they'll say, oh, no, that doesn't run in our family. I always tell people, make sure you see that on a lab result. Okay.
Okay.
Because
Uh-huh.
technology was not then what it is now. And there may have been some questions. There may be something that the doctor or pediatrician may have just grazed across when you were born, and your mom
Mm-hmm.
may have never known whether that's something that you were born with. So we want to see that on a lab test. It's a simple finger prick for anybody who wants to have it done. And it's also something that may possibly be in your birth records, or for those who are having babies now, it is actually done during the newborn screening process.
Okay,
So
so that
if you
Charity,
ever
that answers
receive a
your
letter,
question. She said, "How do people usually find out that they have it?" And you're saying that there's a screening that is done now across the board. Is that across the U.S.?
It's across the U.S., but it wasn't basically mandatory in all 50 states until 2006. So for the young ones like me who may have been born before that time, it's possible that in your state, those tests may or may not have been being done. And so I would say if you've never seen a test, you've never had a test, you want to verify that. But if you are having babies now, in this time frame, then it is a standard for them to do a newborn screening test. And that's for when I say newborn screening, if you're a mom that's just had a baby in the hospitals, that's when they come and get the baby. They test the hearing, their heart conditions, vision, all of these things. And they do a little heel prick, and that blood panel includes sickle cell as well. So they do that screening now, but anybody who is a little seasoned, you may want to verify that as well.
So how would well, I'm not having any more kids, but for my, I'm going to be honest, I've never heard of any type of sickle cell test, any type of sickle cell screening or anything. Right.
And I'm going to piggyback off of what Visha just said, as far as testing. So I just partnered with this organization called North Central Family Medicine, and they told me that they could do it with saliva now. So people was like, "Oh, I don't want to get finger prick or anything like that," and it makes it easier to be done, because usually when they do trait testing at like some of our events and they use the finger prick, they have to have a provider there. But with the saliva, the mouth swab, you don't have to have a provider there on standby while testing is being done. So that's just something that I just learned within the past few weeks, because things are always changing. Things are always changing. And I'm glad that they, are able to test with saliva now, because so many people, especially us of the African American community, are afraid of needles, afraid of sticks, and not. So when I heard that, when I found that out, I was like, oh, like that's amazing that they can test from the saliva now.
So that sort of eliminates the excuse of people that are maybe have that fear of the needle. Okay, so is that anybody, like you were saying, the more seasoned ones of us, anyone can go and get tested with saliva, or if they want a blood, how accurate is the saliva? Just as accurate as getting your finger pricked or something?
So yes, ma'am. When I spoke to, his name is Mr. Dale. They said that they've done it. They technically, what they do, they go out to different colleges in South Carolina to do testing, and they also offer sports physical at a discounted rate, so that they can, get the word out and, get these tests going, because there's a lot of people they've identified that their parents never let them know that they had the trait, and you have to have a physical, done before you do sports. And like they were saying, in the college world, that's where, a lot of it goes down. And, they just want to let people know so that we can, kind of start decreasing the reproduction rates of, two trait positive parents, for that percentage. Like he said, it's not going to be every child, but, like Bisha said, 25% with each pregnancy.
So if someone had the trait and they met someone that had the trait, is that like a complete, like we would not want to get together?
I usually say, you can't control who you fall in love with, right?
Right.
And that's why we want to ask these questions out the gate. Some people feel like it is a deal breaker for them, especially since those of us who live it, we know what those effects look like, right? So for me, that would kind of be a make or break thing for me. And that would be one of the things that I would want to know very early on. I'm like you, Miss Cheryl, I won't have no more children. But
right.
if that were the case, that would be something
Yeah.
I would want to know early on. And here's what I say. I wouldn't necessarily say allow that to deter you, but at the same time, you want to be knowledgeable going in, proactive versus reactive.
I like
because
that.
as Keosha said, things are changing every single day. There's so much advancements in technology that, you know, there may be a possibility to where, you know, two people with the trait, you know, we have all these IVF treatments and things like that.
Right,
you know, we might be
right.
able to talk to a doctor to see how we could align things to where we have a child that does not have sickle cell disease. At the same time, you know, that possibility exists. This also allows you and your partner to determine what life may look like for you if that child is born with sickle cell disease versus having to react on the back end and play catch up. Yes, so I would say, you know, these are definitely questions you want to ask. As Keosha said, this is just as important as your other statuses.
Yeah. This is good because that's what you were going to say, Keosha, about your mom. She got remarried, and from my understanding, what you shared is that she did not know that he had.
So she knew she had it. She asked my stepdad if he had it. And he said no. After my sister was born, like Visha said, they didn't start doing correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't include the sickle cell trait testing, or it wasn't required in every state until what you said 2006. So my sister was born in 2000. So her fetal blood card came back abnormal, but they just didn't know exactly for which abnormal disease or whatnot. So time went on. When my sister got 3 months, she had her first pain crises in her arm, and my mom thought maybe she fell or she broke it or something, and they took her to the emergency room and they did blood work and everything, and that's when they found out that she was sickle cell positive, that she had, she definitely had sickle cell.
And what was that triggering? What was the thing that got them to go and get the test? Because of what?
So being that my mom already knew that she was that she had the sickle cell trait, they automatically went to test for it. And when the test came back saying that my sister definitely has sickle cell, it kind of stirred up a little uproar. My mom, she used to always tell me this story. She was like, well, I know I had it. This your baby, this, that, and the third. So they kind of got to the bottom of it. And then he called his mom. And he was like, Mom, do I have the trait? And she said, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you.
Wow.
At 20-something years old, my dad found out that he had the sickle cell trait because all these years his mom forgot to let him know that, you have the sickle cell trait. And so ever since that day, and I'm just being real, especially for the parents on here right now, ever since that day, my mom said that she always lived with the thought of one day, you just never know, maybe, she never knew what could happen, but she knew before they got together that was just something she did not want to deal with. That's why she was always careful about who she, had a child with. And that's one of the main reasons why I advocate and I fight so hard, especially, that's why I advocate so hard, because I hate for anyone to have to go through, what my family, went through,
Yeah.
So
thank you for sharing that personal, experience. And that was when I see Charity has a question, and she said, if someone hasn't gotten screened, and had a child that missed the newborn test and has the disease, how would they find out most likely? Like, so that gets me back to the symptoms of it. Is the main thing pain? Which one of you all I spoke with and said that there was a baby that the hand was swollen, and that's how Visha, how did you find out that your child had the sickle cell?
So I was one of the ones who had the luxury of being notified through the newborn screening process from the health department. So we received a letter in the mail when my son was about 4 weeks old that showed his diagnosis. And what they did was they brought me in and did what they called a confirmation test. And then we went through like the genetic counseling and started learning, about sickle cell and what it entails. For Charity's question, those things it all depends, and this takes me on another whole avenue here, because someone who's missed the newborn screening test, let's just say someone who is now in their 40s, right? And may be experiencing complications. Some of those things may look like consistent pain. You've got, like Kiosha said, the swelling sometimes. Pain is going to probably be your strongest indicator. And I would say that you can ask or request for that test to be done. Some of the warriors that I have come across who learned later on in life, it was only through the advancements of technology, because like Kiosha said, her grandma said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you." So these are all things that happen, right? Or some people, like in the older days, they would tell their children, "Oh, it's just growing pains," because, medical treatments and access to medical treatment was not as prevalent in those days. Taking a trip to the doctor, you had to be almost, to death, before you could even get to a doctor or a hospital. Or, we did the home remedies, right? You got a cold, did your home remedies at home, and you were fine. You had aches and pains, they did what they needed to do at home, and that was that. But as technology advances and, we have more access to medical treatments and healthcare, then these things kind of come about. So I've come across several patients who did not discover that they actually had sickle cell disease until it was in their later years. So some in their 40s, 50s.
And they were just finding out?
Just finding out, had lived all their lives. And let me also preface this by saying every case is different, right?
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Kiosha mentioned her sister, experiencing a crisis early on. My son experienced his first crisis at around 7 months old. And so for some people...
So crisis, what does that mean? Explain that.
A pain crisis. We identify it as a crisis, but it's referred to as a pain crisis. So that's an episode where they're in excruciating pain, where those blood cells are somehow trapped and not doing what they need to do, right? And of course, pain is an indicator. Pain is like a signal to the body that something's wrong. So when those cells get trapped in the bloodstream and they're not going where they're supposed to go or delivering adequate amounts of blood and oxygen to other places, it causes complications. And so pain is really the indicator.
So if the blood is not getting to certain parts of the body, then that's where it can cause complications with even those parts of the body that's not getting that oxygen.
Correct. That's why a lot of patients with sickle cell are actually at a higher risk for stroke, right? If you're not getting enough blood and oxygen to the brain, what happens? And remember, crisis can occur anywhere where blood flows throughout your body. Other complications include, the breakdown of the joints, deterioration, just different things. If you think about, you're cutting off a supply from something's going to go wrong. So it's like, here go my visuals, right? Watering a garden. You have a garden, you have all these beautiful flowers that have blossomed, and all of a sudden you cut off the water supply. Well, without the water supply, what's going to
Wow.
happen?
Wow.
You know, something's going to be damaged.
Yeah.
And so that is what's occurring in the body when we're having the clumping of those cells. It's cutting off a supply somewhere throughout the body.
Right.
And over time, you end up with damage to other organs and tissues in the body.
Wow. That is a great analogy about the flower, the plant, and the watering. I love your analogies. Listen, if you are just joining us, we are here, another episode of Talk About It Tuesday, and tonight's topic is sickle cell awareness. And if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in. Say hello to us. Also, share this video out. Even if you're watching this afterwards, share this video out so that we can bring awareness to as many people as possible. Parents, I wanted to know, please share if you or someone you knew has sickle cell and the effects as a child. Like if you had it as a child, or someone you know has had it as a child, what were the effects of them as a child, the effects of sickle cell on them as a child? Now, this is a tough question and this is one of the things that really concerned me whenever I was reading. I see Christina said that's so true. Our community is too used to ignoring physical pain, right? And this is growing pain is just because that was I was going to ask. Like someone go 40 something years and just finding out that they have this disease,
Correct.
like this disorder.
And as a culture, you know, they say that we're conditioned in our Black communities to handle pain better. We have a higher tolerance for pain. You know, all of these things and these stigmas and stereotypes. And so that, absolutely.
So that leads me to my question. Why is it an African American thing? Why is mostly African American that this disorder affects? That was when I saw that, I began like, I need to know. I need to research this a little bit more, and I still have to do that. But that really sparked something in my mind, and the question of why is it mostly an African American disorder?
Great question. And so I love the fact that you said mostly, right? Because we come across people all the time who said, oh, that's only a Black thing, or that's only something that you all's community have to worry about, right? But I love that you said mostly, because it is predominantly predominantly affects African Americans here in the United States, but not exclusively. So I often say sickle cell disease is not a disease of race or ethnicity, but a disease of geography. And what I mean by that is because of the origin. So our bodies they do some really unique things, right? It's a self-healing organism. And that's how I like to refer to it, as self-healing, right? Because naturally, our body has the ability to heal itself. Right? With the proper care, you know, the proper adequate diet, nutrition, all of these things, we have the ability, it has the ability to heal itself. And so what happened is, as an evolutionary trait, during the times where malaria was rampant, right, in those countries in the Mediterranean area along that equatorial strip, you think about, where did malaria exist primarily?
In Africa, right?
In Africa, right? So our bodies began to form a hardened cell as a defense to malaria. That malaria parasite cannot live on that hardened cell. So that hardened cell, those trait carriers, right, that is known as the sickle cell trait, of course, began to reproduce. And over time, babies with sickle cell disease were born. So because of the origin, that is why we say it predominantly affects African Americans, because of the origin. But if you think about those areas, and I'll bring, you know, I always like to talk about anybody who's done that ancestry test, like the 23andMe or the DNA. You know, a lot of times, like Kiosha said, we don't want to like talk about those kinds of things, right? It's like, we might not want to do that, but
that is true. We're gonna we're gonna
just let that one fly, right?
Uh-huh.
But I've seen coworkers and friends who have done those tests, and they give you that little pie chart, and it carves out those little sections with those percentages, and it tells
Uh-huh.
you where your ancestry traces from. And so when we look at those, right, I often love to point that out to our other ethnicities who feel like, oh, that's a you thing and not a me thing. Because if you have a Greek background or an Italian background or any of those countries that are surrounded that, Spain, any of those areas that are in that area, you could potentially have sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease. What do we
Wow.
do as a people, right? We
Wow.
expand, we began to navigate
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
drop in other places in other countries.
Right. Right.
Think about even the example I'll use is me for work, right? I
Mm-hmm.
cover the state of South Carolina, so I'm not limited to just my one area of where I
Right.
live. I'm all
Mm-hmm.
around the state. Who's to say that, I didn't meet my husband in another area of the state and have children? He has a whole different background than I do, right? Or
Right.
if I'm traveling out of the country, I may
Mm-hmm.
have worked
Mm-hmm.
overseas or whatever the case may be,
Uh-huh.
to
Mm-hmm.
make the narrative just more real. As time went on, we began to reproduce. So anybody of any race, culture, or creed can absolutely have sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease. It predominantly affects African Americans because of its origin.
Okay. That is good to know because that is something when I saw that, I was like, I thank you for that explanation because I was very much curious and concerned and just wondering like how did this come about to be mostly African American? And okay, so I see our time is gone, but I want to ask a question with elementary age children because that's where our focus is, right? For elementary age children, what does that look like for elementary age child with sickle cell at home, at school? What is that? What is that like?
It's different for every child. The one thing I like to highlight and share is with a child with sickle cell, especially in that elementary age, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're little germ mobiles. So,
Mm,
they're
yeah.
exposed to so many other children. They pick up
Uh-huh.
everything, especially in those younger years. When a baby picks up something, where does it go? Straight
Yes,
into their
right to their
mouth.
mouth. Mm-hmm.
Into their mouths. Children with sickle cell are what we like to say immunocompromised, right? A simple infection could be very challenging for them. A common
Mm.
cold could land them in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Wow.
All of these different factors. And so when we look at elementary age children, it looks different for each one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, education is the biggest component.
Okay.
Knowing about the disease and taking precautions and all of these different things is so crucial. They may experience pain crises. They may experience, it may look different for each one of them, right? You might have a
Mm-hmm.
child in your classroom who looks very lethargic. And you
Uh-huh.
may think, oh, they're just staying up late at night. That may not always
Mm-hmm.
be the case. Or in the classroom, they may not be able to focus. They may be fidgety. And you may think,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, this must be ADHD, or
Mm-hmm.
what does that resemble? And it could just be that they're in pain and they're repositioning to have some level of comfort.
Wow.
It could look like them kind of isolating a little bit because they don't want to share or be
Mm-hmm.
around people because they're a
Mm-hmm.
little uncomfortable. There's a
Mm-hmm.
number of things that could occur in elementary school kids. Like I said, it's just we want to just be able to educate not only parents and caregivers but also educators, our
Mm-hmm.
teachers,
Mm-hmm.
our administrators, faculty and staff, of what this looks like and what the requirements and accommodations need to look like for those children.
I
Okay.
also want to piggyback on something
Uh-huh.
really quick. So my sister, you know, in her younger years,
Mhm.
she had more sickle cell crises in her younger years than her later years in life. And
Mhm.
that typically would trigger. She loved water. She loved water. She said when she's in the water, she just felt free. And my dad taught her how to swim, and then she taught my kids how
Mhm.
to swim. I don't know how to swim,
Wow.
but she taught
Wow.
them how to swim before she passed. And she just loved the water. But you know, her body, the way that her body took the water, especially with the drastic temperature changes and stuff like that, um,
Mhm.
you know, it caused her the summer months. She's like, I'm gonna go in the water. I don't care. I'm gonna live my life. I'm gonna go in the water. Even if I have a pain crisis next week, I'll just deal with it. But I'm gonna have fun now, you know, and that's just until her passing, that's just the type of person she was. She was going to live her life and deal with the consequences later. But that also brought me to Visha. You can definitely, I know time is going up, but IEP is what my sister had when she was in school. That's what it's called. Like
Mhm.
they used to,
Individual.
when she
Yeah.
was sick, so they would send her, they would assign every school year, they would assign her a tutor or homebound teacher. That's what it's called. They would hire
Okay.
people to come to the house and
So did
teach her.
she
And I
attend
remember
school, or
when
did
she
she attend
could.
when
When
she
she could
could?
attend school, she did, and when she couldn't attend school, that's when my mom would, you know, contact them, and you know, sometimes they'll come to the hospital if she was up for it, or if she was home and just, you know, dealing with the crisis at home. They would, you know, come, and you know, they got so used to coming there. Sometimes my mom even cooked dinner for them, you know, because they were there, you know, for a couple hours with her,
Uh-huh.
not
Uh-huh.
every day, but about every other day or so. So if any parents are on here, and you know, I'm praying that you do have one for your child. But if you don't, definitely get with the guidance counselor or the school or wherever you are to get one. I'm sorry, the little one's
That's
crying.
okay. So I'm thank you for mentioning that, Kiosha, about the IEP, because Visha, we talked about that. What is the importance of that IEP uh, for for the child that
Very important.
that's dealing with sickle cell in the school? Now I see Tamika said, hello, our family all have the trait, and my nephew is a sickle cell warrior. Side note, hey Visha.
Hey,
and,
Tamika.
and that thank you for sharing that, Tamika. And also, if there are any other parents or caregivers, family members, if you know somebody, what has been your biggest challenge, or have you ever had a challenge with the sickle cell warrior in school? What has been your biggest challenge for your sickle cell warrior, and especially let's look at home or at school? Let us know. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Visha, when you're talking about school, in somebody in elementary, is there like limitations for them? Uh, has your son dealt with like maybe anyone like picking on him, or kids just not understanding? Is it emotional? Are there limitations, things he cannot do? Sort of explain that to us. Like what did that look like for your baby? What does that
Absolutely.
look like in the school? Talk about the IEP. I'm trying to get as much in as possible in
As
this.
much as exactly. Absolutely. We might need a part two.
Right.
I was just thinking that we need a part two.
This can cover so much. So I would,
Right,
like you
right.
said, encourage all moms or parents, let me say that, to have 504 IEP. You want to make sure that your child is covered all the way around. Unfortunately, because there's not enough education around sickle cell disease, it makes it kind of hard sometimes to understand, especially in our school systems, like when our children are missing school a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it may look like something else in the classroom. And then when you start counting absences, it may look like, oh gosh, this child is just not coming to school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let
Mm-hmm.
me figure out what's going on in the home that these
Mm-hmm.
parents can't get this baby to school. And
Mm-hmm.
then then when you say sickle cell, it's like, oh, well, just a little pain, give them a little Tylenol and send them on.
Wow.
And it's not that simple.
It's not
and
that
so
easy.
you want to make sure it's not that easy. I mean, think about it. If we could give them Tylenol, we want to send them to school. You know what I'm saying? If it was an easy fix like that, that's what we would do and get them out the door. It also may look like, oh gosh, this child is always late coming to school. But if you had to wake up in the morning and decide, let your body decide what it was going to do for the day, then it took every ounce of fight in them to even get to school in the first place. So being 10 minutes late or 15 minutes late is an accomplishment considering what they had to go through to get there. So to back up with the IEP, you want to make sure that you definitely have that in place, because you want to make sure you have those accommodations. And it could be something as simple as extra time allotted for assignments. If they're not in school, you know, them having extended time on standardized tests. It may also look like having provisions for them to take those standardized tests alone outside of the general classroom, or having things maybe read to them to make sure that they're sticking within a time frame. You also want to make sure that things are in place where they're able to use the restroom as often as they need to, and to be able to drink as much water as they need to, because they need to be hydrated all the time. Dehydration is a trigger for a pain crisis.
That was one of the things, the questions that are, are there certain things that can trigger the flare-ups? The crisis.
Dehydration. Oh my goodness, dehydration. Think about taking water from a blood cell that is already not functioning as properly, right? Or functioning like it should. So you also have, with those sickle cells, they don't live as long in the bloodstream as well. A normal red blood cell lives about 120 days versus a sickle cell that lives about 10 to 20 days. So it's dying off a lot sooner. So think about, you already have a distorted blood cell that has a shorter life expectancy, and you're just going to suck all the water from it, right? And you have a lot of those in your body. So dehydration is a trigger, and you want to make sure that they're staying hydrated. So this child may need to be able to drink in classes where teachers say that there's no drinks allowed. They may need to get up and be excused to the restroom, even though restroom time is at 10:15, right? They may need to go. They need to go as often as they need to. You also want to look at things like PE, recess, during cold months and during the extremely hot months. We're in South Carolina. I mean, when kids are out at recess, normally you want to take precautions because of the heat, but especially with a child with sickle cell. During the winter months, you don't want to have those babies on the playground in 30-degree weather. Cold, extremely cold temperatures is also another trigger for a sickle cell crisis. And so all of these things need to be taken into consideration. They don't need to be pushed to the point of exertion. So when we're looking at them in PE or, you know, just in regular playtime, we want to make sure that they're taking frequent breaks. Kiosha mentioned swimming. My baby loves the water as well. And he says the exact same thing. He doesn't feel his pain when he's in the water. But at the same time, when he's swimming, we got to make sure we're taking frequent breaks. We also have to make sure that that water is at a certain temperature, because again, that cold water, you and I could jump in a pool, you know, and it wouldn't bother us. We'd just be like, "Ooh, that was a little shot," but ooh, you know, we're okay. But somebody with sickle cell, that looks a lot differently. That could cause, she'll, like Shanavia would say, "I know I'm gonna have a crisis. You know, I know I'm gonna be in pain, but I have to have my moments of enjoyment at this time." So there are a lot of factors to be considered when you're talking about a school-age child having sickle cell, and it goes a lot deeper. Every child is different, so that's why they need that individual educational plan. Exactly.
Wow. Ooh, this is a lot. This is a lot. So we're coming close to the end, but why do you think we haven't heard a lot about this? Like, even in schools, why isn't that?
Because it affects.
I don't hear a lot about it.
I know Kiesha's gonna jump right in.
Because it affects the majority of African Americans. Like, and I'm just going to be honest. People are born with sickle cell. You have some diseases that get more attention. I'm sorry. You have some diseases that get more attention than sickle cell, and people are born with this disease. This is not something that you catch, and I'm like, there should definitely be more awareness around sickle cell, and that's where we step in. And I'm so glad that God gave me. And he gave me the vision, and he brought everyone to me, especially like Visha, how we met. Shanavia was working from the heavens because I didn't even know that she reached out to Visha about the sickle cell walk that we attended after she passed. And then Visha gave me my interview when I was working at the American Red Cross because I draw blood. I'm a phlebotomist. So everything just came in a full circle. Everything came in a full circle. But one thing that I am one thing that I'm going to work on, and I haven't spoken to Visha about this, but North Central Family Medicine, they're located in Rock Hill. They're going to start giving classes to people, whether they be school district coaches. I even said as far as park and recs, we have like Charleston County Park and Rec, so that they would know how to go about dealing with sickle cell when they're faced with it. We have a lot of after school programs that go on and extracurricular activities. I want to network with as much people as I can, and I know we can make it happen so that we can hold a class in different areas of the state to bring awareness about sickle cell. And I really want to do that. That's something that has been on my heart to do, and I know we can definitely make it happen because the hour just isn't enough.
Listen, this is so I see enough. It truly is, because I'm just in awe that I have not heard a lot about it. That is, and I don't know, is it just me or is it I mean, I feel like I'm a master's degree educator and I have not heard a lot about this disorder, and I'm just like,
it's not. I still get asked when I say sickle cell, people are like, oh, that's still around? Like, people still get sickle cell? And I'm like, wow. Wow. But yes, you're not the only one. There's just not enough education and awareness surrounding this disease. And that's where we come in. That's why, being here on LightItUp TV, it just makes a world of difference. People like you who say,
and thank you for the opportunity.
This is something we need to know about. Absolutely. Thank you for stepping in and filling in the gap. Like Kiosha said, there are many other diseases that get notoriety or that get attention, funding. There's information about it. And I don't like to think that is because it predominantly affects our Black and African American communities, because we know we live in a new day and a new time where diversity, equity, and inclusion is, the highlight of our world. And so I like to think of it as making progress. We're making progress. I'm going to say that we're making progress because, for obvious reasons, and because it is such a misunderstood disease as well.
And because it's so internal. Right,
it's so internal.
Other diseases you can see physically, right? You can see that this is going on physically, but for a kid that's 5, 6, 7, elementary age children, it's internal.
It's internal. It's invisible.
And even
you can't see it.
And we may have to have a part 2, because I also wanted to know, like, does it affect emotionally? Right.
Oh,
an emotional aspect.
Absolutely.
Mood swings. I used to tell Shanavia all the time, I'm like, why are you so moody? But it took for me to, after she passed, I did a whole lot of studying and whatnot. And granted, I would be there with her in the hospital bed and stuff like that, comforting her. But it's like, it affects them. And sometimes I just had to bite my tongue. And I was like, I understand you're going through it. I don't know the feeling of having sickle cell, but I see what she went through. So, when she gets snappy and stuff like that, it's just the pain. When it goes away, she's happy-go-lucky,
Wow. Wow.
So being understanding when you have a warrior means a whole lot.
Yeah.
A whole lot.
And if I can paint a picture, Cheryl, you know, just even as adults, right? And it's hard for children because they're coming into their identity, right? They're figuring out the world. We
Right.
are their examples at a certain point. But as an adult, think about how our mental health diminishes, or, you know, when things happen in life. You know, I use the example of a heartbreak, right? You ever been through a heartbreak? You're going to listen to the sad R&B songs. You know, you're going
Yes.
to cry. Your life is going to look a lot differently than when you were happy, right? Or you think about even outside of that, dealing with adult problems. You know, if you're trying to figure out how to make ends meet, if you're going through physical things within your body, think about depression, right?
Yeah.
How popular, you know, and I hate to say that term, but how many people are dealing with depression, or what they've referred to now as a functioning or functional depression,
Yeah.
right? You don't even know you're depressed.
Right.
But think about how that looks like, what that looks like in your mental state, and think about having a physical barrier just wreaking in your body every single day. You're living in some degree of pain every single day. It takes you out of your normalcy of, you know, I can't go outside and play with the kids, or if I do, I can't do what the other kids do, or I have to be in the hospital. It brings about the why me, you know, all of these different things that they're figuring out mentally, and it does affect you. And so I always say there's layers to this disease. You think about even as a caregiver, right? It alters your life. It not only alters that warrior's life, but the people and the family. It's a family disease. You have to figure out how to be that caregiver. A lot of warriors in their adult life have not been able to work, so it affects them financially, right? Now you've got an added stress on top of the physical pain, doctor's appointments, treatments, etc. Now you're worried about how you're gonna keep the lights on. So there's layers to this, and that all affects you mentally. Like Hilda said, you know, the mood swings, right? It's like, how do I deal with this? It's just the unknown. Like nobody understands what I'm dealing with because I'm the only one feeling it, and all of these outside factors are agitating me. So my lashing out, or my sharpness, or, you know, whatever, it is only coming out of frustration because of what I'm dealing with internally.
Wow. This has been so good, you all. As you all are thinking of giving some last words for right now, because it looks like we may have to have a part two. I see Christina asked the question: where can parents find tools to help them know how to advocate for their kids? Before, go ahead and answer that. Where can parents find tools to help them know how to advocate for their? Go ahead, advocate for their
Right
kids.
here.
Right here. We have it right here. So
we
be
will
sure
drop our
that
information.
yes.
Because I mean, this is where it begins. We have other community-based organizations that have tons of information. If you are shy, or if you're a little hesitant about reaching out to strangers, I would often tell parents, start within your child's school. You need to talk to a social worker within the school, or that school counselor, psychologist, and ask them for resources. If they're unfamiliar, guess what? They have networks that they can reach out to, which looks like one of us, or community-based organizations that can come in and provide that tool. I absolutely enjoy going into schools and educating the faculty and staff, and sharing the school nurses, all of these things, because it is where our babies spend the most of their time. They spend more time with the teachers at school than they do with us at home, because the weekend just isn't long enough, right? And they have them. I used to tease Draylen's teachers, like, this is y'all baby, right? I pick them up during the summer. Like, he's not during the summer. This is your baby, right? But at the end of the day, that's where you can start. But like I said, you have organizations like us. I also have my nonprofit. It's a parent advocacy group as well. And that's one of the pillars of, or the missions of that organization, is to make sure that our babies